Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to look at a case about identity theft. A wife and mother known as Lori Ruff, living incognito until sadly taking her own life in 2010. I came across a really intriguing article written in the New York Daily News back in 2013, and as it's now been a few years since it was written, I tapped her name into Google and up popped her true identity. I hope you enjoy listening. Let's start in 2013. 3 years after John Blakely buried his wife and the mother of his young daughter, he still didn't know exactly who she was. She managed to fool everyone, including federal and private investigators, about her true identity before tragically committing suicide and taking her secrets to the grave. To her husband, she was Lori Kennedy, a woman born in Arizona who had had a rough childhood, and she simply didn't want to discuss her past. To anyone else who knew her before, she was Becky Sue Turner. Both names are false. A social security investigator who had been assigned her case stated she had created a false identity so that she could remain anonymous to those who were in her past. It was thought she was either running away from a crime or an abusive relationship. Her in-laws claim there was always something that didn't quite feel right about her. She lied about her past before moving to Dallas and marrying Blake Ruff. With her history spanning at least 4 other states. Authorities say it all started in May of 1988. An unknown woman in Bakersfield, California, requested the birth certificate of 2-year-old Becky Sue Turner, a toddler who had died in a house fire in Fife, Washington, back in 1971. The request wasn't unusual at the time, and it was indeed granted. In 1989, this woman used the birth certificate to obtain a valid Idaho identification card bearing her photo with the little girl's name. The deceased girl's parents would later tell investigators that they didn't know this woman who stole their daughter's identity. Weeks later, the woman's bizarre identity trail continued to Dallas, where she legally changed her name to Lori Erica Kennedy and applied for a new social security number. Back then, as with the birth certificate record, it was far easier to apply for a social security number than it is today. Using this number, she then applied for a Texas driver's license in 1989, listing herself as 19, an age that may or may not have been her correct age. She went on to attend community college after obtaining her GED, which did not require high school transcripts, and she graduated with a business administration degree from the University of Texas at Arlington in 1997. In 2003, she met Blake at Northwest Bible Church in Dallas. She told him her parents were both deceased and that she had been an only child. She'd said her childhood hadn't been a happy one and didn't have any family possessions of sentimental value because of it. Blake's family weren't certain of her fame, but despite this, within a year of seeing one another, they announced they were getting hitched. As part of a tight-knit, well-established family in the area, Blake's mother found it difficult getting to know this woman, entering into her son's life because Lori flat out refused to answer any personal questions. When her future mother-in-law wanted to announce their wedding in the paper, Lori refused the offer, simply saying it wasn't her style. In January of 2004, Blake and Lori eloped. They married in a small church outside of Dallas, with only the preacher as witness. They then moved to Leonard in Texas. Unfortunately, the marriage didn't last. After several attempts at getting pregnant, and after a few miscarriages, the couple finally gave birth to their daughter through IVF. Her difficulty with childbearing caused the Ruff family to question her true age and whether she was in fact older than she claimed, which would explain her difficulty in getting pregnant naturally. She turned out to be an overprotective mother to the extreme. She often refused to let anyone else hold the baby, even taking her to use the restroom. She would not allow Blake's mother to look after their baby unsupervised, which naturally upset his family to the core. There had already been 8 grandchildren before their daughter, all who had been part of their lives. Tensions grew, and Lori eventually did not want their daughter visiting her husband's parents at all. In the summer of 2010, Blake moved out of the house and he moved into his parents. Soon after, he filed for divorce after unsuccessfully undergoing marriage counseling. Lori fell apart. She started sending threatening emails to the Ruff family. She made it as difficult as possible to exchange custody of her daughter. The Ruffs even noticed one day that one of their house keys was missing, which led them to apply for a cease and desist order against her with the judge. It is sadly thought that the challenge of living a life of secrets and distrust ultimately smothered her, leading to her startling suicide in the months after. On the morning of Christmas Eve in 2010, Blake's father found her car idling in their driveway. Inside, he found her dead from a self-inflicted bullet wound. With her was an 11-page letter addressed to my wonderful husband, as well as one to her daughter to be opened when she turned 18. According to her obituary, Lori was born on the 18th of July 1969. She lived in Scottsdale, Arizona, and was a member of Cornerstone Baptist Church of Trenton. Her funeral was held on the 3rd of January 2011 with an outpouring of support seen throughout the community. Blake was beyond distraught, but by then the rest of his family were fueled and determined to find out who this woman really was. After the funeral, Blake's brother, Miles Darby, and a few other family members set out to her home in Leonard with the help of authorities to find any clues she may have left behind. Though surprised by what they ended up finding, they say they weren't exactly caught off guard. Inside a bedroom closet in a strong box that Blake had always been forbidden to touch by his wife, they uncovered her long-kept secrets. Out poured her Idaho ID reading Becky Sue Turner, along with a copy of the deceased child's birth certificate and scraps of paper, one containing the name of an attorney and the words 402 months. 402 months. It still clearly didn't add up to anyone. With the help of a private investigator, the family uncovered newspaper headlines from 1971 reporting the 2-year-old girl's death in Washington state. But the rest of the clues led to dead ends. The attorney named on the paper, a man in California, said he didn't know anything about this mystery woman. A deeper hunt revealed a mail drop under her name in Boulder City, Nevada, that forwarded her mail to Dallas. Authorities ran her face in every facial recognition database known. Her fingerprints were sent to the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security. nothing came up. Lori's success of being evasive long before the internet leads them to believe that she had help, possibly by a hired identity broker. The Ruffs were at their wits' end, unable to tell her little girl who her mother was. Whom or what was she running from? Or was it something that she had done? Let's have a look at what was discovered about her true identity since 2013. Her true origins remained a mystery until 2016. So, for 6 years after she had taken her own life, her identity was confirmed using a combination of public records and direct-to-consumer autosomal SNP analysis of her husband's and daughter's DNA. Carleen Fitzpatrick, a former nuclear physicist who created the field of forensic genealogy, learned of Lori Ruff in 2013 and began work on her case. She had Blake Ruff's and their daughter tested by a direct-to-consumer testing company, through which she was able to obtain Ruff's DNA results using genetic genealogy phasing techniques, which essentially subtracted Blake Ruff's DNA from Lori's. She had a first cousin named Cassidy on her list of matches. However, the name was very common, and the cousin, a man by the name of Michael Cassidy, was not responsive. It's unclear if he even saw the messages. After 2 years, Fitzpatrick finally identified Ruff when she discovered a third cousin, Matt, who was related to the Cassidys. Knowing the identity of the third cousin led her to her true identity. She was identified as Kimberly Mclean, born October the 16th, 1968. She was 42 when she died. Turns out she had been a native of suburban Philadelphia who left home at the age of 17 in the autumn of 1986, simply because she did not get along with her mother and stepfather. They themselves spent 30 years hoping she was alive and safe. Her mother was Michael Cassidy's aunt, Deanne, and Deanne was then married to James Mclean. To Deanne, now in her 80s, the news was devastating. She had last seen Kimberly 30 years prior, and she just learnt that her daughter had passed away. Certainly there is much that we don't and can't know about Kimberly's disappearance. All of these events occurred a long time ago. Her mother declined answering, and instead she referred questions to her brother, Lori's uncle Tom Cassidy. He provided some additional information. Kimberly grew up in the Philadelphia suburbs along with a sister. Deanne was a stay-at-home mum. Kimberly's dad was a carpenter and volunteer firefighter. He said there were rides on fire engines and a magnificent hand-built playhouse in the backyard. There were family vacations and day trips and family dinners every night. When Kim was a teenager, her parents got divorced. Deanne met a man named Robert Becker, remarried, and moved the girls to Wyncote, Pennsylvania, where Kim attended Bishop McDevitt High School. This was around the time the troubles started, according to Cassidy, her uncle. She never adjusted to the new house and the divorce. There were new rules, a new school, and at some point it became too much for her. In 1986, when she was 18, she moved to King of Prussia, Pennsylvania, about half an hour away. And then, one day, she told her mum she was leaving for good. "Don't come after me," she warned. And the family never heard from her ever again. They tried everything they could think of, but Kim had ensured they would never find her by changing her name not once but twice. For the life of me, we can't figure out why, her uncle said. So Lori Ruff wasn't in a cult, as far as anyone can tell. She wasn't a spy. She was simply a teenage runaway. After leaving home in 1986, there are 2 years that can't be accounted It's clear she spent at least some time in Idaho, California, and Las Vegas before moving to Texas. She got her GED, graduated from the University of Texas, and met Blake Ruff through church. She and Blake had a child. It was an ordinary life. To her uncle, it underscores the sadness of it all, the futility. Can you imagine? He asked. There was nobody from the family there to congratulate her on her college graduation. There was nobody there when she got married. She had a child without her mum there to help. Every year when her birthday came around, Lori couldn't celebrate. Can you imagine the burden of all that fakeness? How it all added up. The Ruffs saw what that entailed. They watched as Lori got progressively more troubled, culminating in her suicide. The Ruff family are only relieved that they now at least know her true identity, and they know she had a family that loved her. And now their little daughter has a new set of grandparents on the East Coast and a whole new batch of cousins. The two families have been connected, but for some, the truth is even harder to understand than any of the wild speculation. They wondered if she was AWOL from the army. They wondered if maybe there was some connection to Las Vegas and whether she was caught up in some kind of crime family stuff. Nothing like that ever turned up. She was never connected to any criminal investigation as either Kim Mclean or as Lori Ruff. Most of us, we get lonesome and homesick the first time we go to college, when we join the military. You wait for that first phone call to talk to mum and dad, and yet at 18 she was out there all on her own. It's hard to fathom someone walking away with an intact family and never ever reconnecting for the rest of their lives. That's it. And what do you think about Lori? I wonder whether there was more going on in her life that simply hasn't been divulged. I'd really love to hear from you. In fact, I'm going to challenge you. Will you put Mayday.